Good evening. Welcome to the October 18th RSU 14 Board of Directors meeting. We are in the Raymond Broadcast Modular. It is 6:32, and if I could please have a roll call, Mr. Superintendent.
You sure can. Kate Bricks.
Here.
Eric Colby.
Present.
Janie Cummins.
Here.
Don Dillon. Diana Forsland.
Here.
Marge Cavoni.
Here.
Pete Hensler.
Here.
Anna Kenny.
Here.
Scott McLean.
Here.
Genevieve Delano.
Here.
If you'll
Don
join
Davis.
me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
No, you're not.
All righty. There are no adjustments to the agenda this evening. I will open it up to public input. If there is anyone from the public who would like to speak on something that is not on the agenda. Seeing nobody, we will close public input. First on our agenda will be the influence update. Laura Morris is the director of that group, and she will make a presentation to us on the substance abuse and developing brain of our youth. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you. No, thank you for letting me come. This is really wonderful. You are an extraordinary group of people, and to have an audience like this for a little bit that you are interested, I really, truly thank you. Do you know what Be the Influence is? Okay. A lot of people really don't, and so we want to make sure that you know that it really is a coalition of people in this whole community that are coming together and trying to make a difference in the schools and law and wonderful places. Schools is a wonderful place, and your staff is doing a great job, so we're very thankful for that. If you look at this right there, what do you see?
Pop-Tarts.
What do you see? You see sugar?
Unhealthy eating.
Does it look like a box of Pop-Tarts or Pop-Tarts?
Oh.
Yeah, like a little cluster. Yeah, when's the last time you ate a Pop-Tart
Ew.
in this room? Oh, when's the last time you ate a Pop-Tart?
1972.
I do have them in my cabinet, though, because the grandkids eat them.
Because of the grandkids. Okay. Well, I'm 57. I haven't had a Pop-Tart since I was 7th, 8th grade. It wouldn't appeal to me anymore. So one of the reasons why I think it's really important that as a school we understand this is the age that's being targeted for marijuana. Why would we have Pot-Tarts when that's not even something that older people eat anymore, really? And they make it look fun. They make it look sugary and delicious. And so it's a dangerous drug that we're treating as if it's nothing, and we need to know about it. So we need to learn the truths about the dangers of marijuana. And this is one of our wonderful little youth groups talking about the teen brain. Edibles. I brought some brownies. I got a couple of gummy bears here. Would anybody like some?
It depends are they real?
I'm not sure. Would you like to test them?
No.
Brownies, gummy bears, can't even give them away? Okay. If there were kids in this room, what do you think they would do?
They'd be gone.
They would be eating them, absolutely. And the scary thing nowadays is, do we know what we're eating? Should I eat the head of the gummy bear? How much, like what's in there? If there's any kind of marijuana product, the concentration is so high that the edibles are becoming very scary. What they do most of the time, other than the baked goods, is they will, the leaf of the marijuana, they actually excrete out all the oil through a butane process. And so the concentration is very high. You could eat the head of this, and that could be enough. That could be like 2 joints. We don't know. And so the very scary thing is kids are eating these because it looks very innocent and they think it's just a cookie. And sometimes the reaction isn't for like an hour or so. And so they're ending up in the ER with horrific problems, and young children too, far younger than high school and secondary as well. So edibles are a real concern because we don't know how to jurisdict them, and we don't know how much is in them. They're very dangerous, and you were smart not to eat those because I put marijuana in all of them. No, I really didn't. It's true. Okay, e-cigs and hookahs. I mean, we know what regular marijuana looks like, but this has been a real problem, particularly in your schools. I know if Seth Fournier were here, or Matt Sear, they would tell you that this is how they're hiding a lot of the marijuana. So again, they take the concentrated oil, it vapes up, and it's a far concentrated hit, far more than smoking. So just because it's e-cigs and hookahs doesn't mean it's innocent. There could be anything in there, and that's one of the ways that they're using. We know from our MIAS survey, which is our main integrated youth health survey, that 24% of middle schoolers right here in Windham and Raymond are using, and 60% for high schoolers. And that was more from a focus group, not all from MIAS. But really, if you ask around, and I'm sure probably Sandy or Phil could tell you, huge percentage of kids are using marijuana. Third of the eighth graders say that it's very easy to get, and the truth is it's accessible right now. Now we're going to legalize marijuana. It's going to be hugely accessible for your children. And we believe that in the social norm, there's nothing wrong with it. Why would we not believe that at this point when it's being legalized, it's treating medicinal things? So we really have an opportunity to educate our kids on that this is dangerous stuff. This is not innocent. They're starting at about 13.5. Scientifically, what we're really looking at is what does it do to their brains? This is why it's so dangerous for young kids. They start at the age of 13.5, we're saying, and your brain isn't fully developed to the age of 25. But this is a regular brain. And if you can see all the yellow and the orange in there, that's basically your neurons moving around. And I don't know what you know about the brain, but to simplify it, there's about 25 billion neurons, and they just move around in your head. And when they connect, that's how we learned to function. That's how our brain works. So it's problem solving, it's empathy, it's health habits, it's how we relate to other people. It's how we reduce anxiety. It's everything is controlled within our brain, as we know that. So you can see there's a lot of movement, and we're connecting, we're moving. There's friction, but long-term marijuana use, and we're talking long-term. It's like if you smoke cigarettes, you're going to get emphysema eventually if it's long-term. This is what a brain looks like over time. So you can see the whole fear of us losing those receptors that are connecting is a logistic scientific fact. And that's what's happening with these kids who, if they start that early, their brains never get a chance to connect and to problem solve and to become healthy brains that will work in the future. So what happens when they use it? And I'm sure there are statistics that we could ask in this very room. You're probably seeing that it makes schoolwork and grades very difficult, distorts their perceptions, impairs coordination. For those that drive, they get behind the wheel of a car, and we don't even have a way to test it anymore. Makes thinking and problem solving difficult. The maturation of the brain, you find if people use it for a long time, over time, they have a very immature perspective of the world. They can't make mature decisions because their brain has never had the chance to become a mature brain that can problem solve. Interferes with their learning and memory, causes the heart rate to increase, and again, prohibits the maturity of the brain. That's kind of some of the general ones. These are the long-term effects, though. I don't know if anybody realizes that the lung damage is just as bad as if you're using tobacco products. In fact, there's 4 times more tar if they're smoking that gets ingested into the lungs. So we already know tobacco's bad, but for whatever reason, we don't transfer this over. They're finding a lot of studies now where it's leading to personality disorders in the future. So schizophrenia, bipolar, a lot of those are related to long-term not heroin, but marijuana, which leads to that. This new one, this CHS, cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, college kids are vomiting. And it's because what the marijuana is doing to their immune system is causing this vomiting. And now they're prescribing or referring marijuana as an antidote to vomiting and nausea. So that's a concern. I don't know if you know this, I think this is a huge fact, but when you use marijuana products, it stays in the fatty tissues of your body for 21 days every time you use it. Where are the fatty tissues of our body? Our brain and our reproductive system. So what we're seeing now is, kids might say, oh, well, it's moderate. I smoke a couple of times a week. I don't use very often. It's not like alcohol. Well, if it's staying in the fatty tissues of your brain for 21 days, that is cumulative, and it is building up, and it is building up. And so it is a problem. And so if you haven't smoked for 2 days and you get behind the wheel of a car, you actually still have THC in the fatty tissues of your brain. Reproductively, OBGYNs, they're seeing all these kids being born with traces of THC in their system. That makes me really sad. So already they're starting off their life with THC, and I don't think kids would know that. I don't think adults know that. So if they're conceiving of children and they've been pot smokers, there's probably going to be some repercussions. This is a big one, and I'm sure you've seen it, the mood swings, the depression, the anxiety. Social anxiety among youth is at an all-time spiked high. And if you go to Colorado and you go to the other states who have done this, have legalized it, it's growing by numbers. They're having anxiety problems coming into the ER all the time. Have you seen it in the schools? I'm just asking you. Any increase?
He's shaking his head yes, so we're going to
Okay,
go by him. He's there.
Phil might have seen it.
Definitely more kids with more anxiety.
Yeah, and I mean, I think social media contributes to that too, but there's a lot of evidence that are saying, and let me tell you why. What happens is when you use marijuana, of course, it stimulates your dopamine. And what happens is, so you're happy up here, but then when you go down below the regular area where your body was used to regulating its own dopamine. So by the time you keep stimulating it and overstimulating it, it doesn't relax you anymore. It ruins your body's own ability to be happy and to calm itself down. And so that's why, they keep smoking it to feel better, but their whole point of reference has changed. It's just spiked over time, and so it gets worse and worse and worse. You've seen a lot of the indifference because, again, you're not connecting in a lot of the areas that would control your ambition. They tend to be very lackadaisical. And this is a big, huge fact we hear all the time at all our marijuana conferences. But over time, you can have an 8-point drop in IQ. So this is scary stuff. A lot say it's not addictive. It is addictive. It is an addictive product. 9% of youth will become addicted to it, and higher for those who start in the teens, of adults. So 17% and 25 to 50. It's no different than other drugs. Now, anybody recognize this picture? Yeah. I'm with people who were my age in this room. So that would be like Garcia and those guys. So this is not the Woodstock weed that we know. So the THC, which you know is probably the mind-altering drug that's in marijuana. When we were growing up and using marijuana, it was about 3 to 5% THC. In this day and age, it just increases and increases because they're making it in a higher concentration. So 1960, it was 70%, 1993, 12. We're going all the way up to 2017 where, like I said, with the oils and the waxing, the natural concentration, some of your kids are taking hits that are 35 to 90% THC, just burning their brains. It's no different than if you're an alcoholic and you have a beer, or you're an alcoholic and you take a whole jug of hard alcohol and, chug the whole thing down. That's basically what's happening. Do you remember these? Anybody? Okay, so you remember, there were times when we used to advertise tobacco, and we used, gorgeous people and healthy backgrounds, and we had a cartoon character, Joe Camel. He got outlawed because kids were like, oh, cartoon, cool. And then they had, doctors on ads that said, I smoke Camels, that's my brand. So there was a time when we were so ignorant about how bad tobacco products are for us. Doctors used to tell pregnant women, smoke while you're pregnant because you'll have a lower birth weight baby. It will be easier for you. So, we've learned over time. It's taken us 50 years to educate people on how bad tobacco products are for you. Let's not do the same with marijuana. It has so many of the same qualities. But why are our kids using? I mean, look at the environment they live in. It's in the movies. That's a little cartoon, game. It's in music. There are television shows about it. It is social norm. And so within the school, we've got to appeal to the adults in this community. We have to appeal to people to say, it's not what it used to be. It's pretty dangerous, and your children are using it. But I can see why, because it really is a social norm. So how do we keep our kids safe for a successful future? We just need to educate. We need to educate youth and adults about what they're really working with. We need to get scientific, the logistic of the developing brain and the mental health and the legal ramifications. We need to treat addiction as a sickness. It is a sickness. And these kids have a lot of them. And so no stigma, but we have to really find out how we can prevent it, but then what do we do once they have it? And the adults and the parents, make sure that you know what your kids are doing and the real facts about today's marijuana. Promote youth empowerment and belonging. If kids feel good about themselves, they don't tend to do things that are bad for them, and that's one thing that BTI works very strongly on, is engaging them in projects, whether it's art or theater or, training other kids, whatever it is, something that makes them feel engaged and supported. And support family skill building and other healthy family norms. Provide schools with the resources. I think your school does an amazing job. There's not really much I can tell you. You need to change this, you need to do that. Just keep doing what you're doing, and if I could say one thing, it's get this stuff out to the parents, to the adults in this town, because I just don't think people know. So your strong policies are already in place. You're doing evidence-based curriculum. We looked at that again, and we're going to do a little bit more. And your staff, now we're training the peers so that they can be the people who are bringing the message to other peers. That's far more effective. And restrict community access, and we're working on that. We're really trying to look at all the hot spots in town where kids are being sold or using marijuana. We're having a meeting on the 19th, tomorrow, with some law enforcement to see what we can do about making that even less accessible and harder for them to do in those areas. And marketing, let's just be careful how we're marketing to youth. It takes a community, it takes a village, and you're part of that, and that's why I appreciate your audience tonight. But let's just reduce the access, educate, find alternative activities, and just be the influence yourself. Be an extension of what we're trying to do. Now, does anybody want a brownie? I promise I didn't put anything in.
No.
Yes.
Laura, can you tell, because I don't know if everybody knows exactly what your group consists of as far as school officials?
Sure. There are
Parents.
12 different sectors. I hope I can get them all. But there's like the religious community, there's business, there's youth, there are parents, there are the schools, there's law enforcement, there's, help me out here, Phil. We got business. Yeah, but those are the main ones, but they really, every nook and cranny you can get into the community. Everybody could be part of this process. I don't think of it as like, oh, you're law enforcement, you go here. I think everybody should be pulled in on this. And then we can really make a difference. But it's very difficult when you're a small force and you have a social norm like marijuana legalization hitting you in the face all the time. And I don't blame the people who don't know, because they don't know. So we need to educate.
Question.
Wasn't there recently a survey done with the school?
That is the MIA surveys, the main integrated youth health survey. We do it every 2 years, and actually the new information has come out. Do you have it yet, Sandy?
I do, yeah.
Okay, we have to have like a personal code to get into it. I have mine too, I just haven't gotten into it yet. But so we're going to see now the differences between 2015 and now, and has there been any difference with some of the efforts that we've put in place? I can tell you that I talked to the people who the contractors who do it for us. Tobacco has gone down, which makes sense. We've been educating for 50 years, but marijuana has gone up. So despite what our efforts are, marijuana is going to go up because now access is easier, social norm is easier. So we have a real tsunami coming at us that we're working with. Opiates obviously is up, but I will say I think it's gone down a little bit from the last study. And that's one of our next soapboxes. We're really going to get on the opiates education. And we already have some programs going on in the 7th grade for that.
When do you anticipate the total results?
I think we can.
We can check on that.
Okay.
Yeah, that report should have it. It just came from the Department of Health. And when they pass it down to us, then we then now have the right to share it. We're going to do a presentation at one of our coalition meetings with the Opportunity Alliance, and she wasn't available November, so probably in December. But if we need to see it before then, we'll bring that out. And I think,
Pretty good information, Jessica.
Okay. All right.
yeah.
Does it have a difference? Does it show you this is where you were, I don't know, what was the date, the last one, 2000?
2015.
know
Like I
where
said,
you've
it was,
gone.
tobacco went down. I know marijuana went up. Alcohol, I think, stayed still, and opiates was down a tad. That's all I know generally, because I haven't seen the report yet either, but.
And my last question is it just 9 through 12 that takes that survey, or is it 6 through 8 as well?
It's 7, 8.
7 and 12?
I think it's 7. I think it's middle school and up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
it's 7, 8. I don't think 6
7.
takes it. But
'Cause I think
7,
one of
8,
the-
and then the high school.
One of the first slides you showed, I think, gave the
Middle school.
middle school.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it's 7 and 8, not 6, 7, 8.
Yeah, I don't think it's 6. Yeah.
Jesus, I hope not.
Yeah. So, but you know, sometimes that's a good general, but sometimes we don't always go by that. So we've been working with an evaluator to do something on like a quarterly basis too, and a lot of our focus groups. When I first came in, I met with every sector individually, and really, we can find out a lot from the schools. They have a lot of information. The resource officers do, Parks and Rec. So depending on who you're talking to, we're getting information from parents and youth as well.
Eric?
Yes, I want to thank you for
Hi,
your work.
yeah.
What is evidence-based curriculum?
It means that it's been used before and it has been deemed evidence-based, and that they did research on it that said, yes, it made a behavior change. So it's like, say you come up with a program, you have to submit it to criteria. I don't even know where they do it, out of Washington or something. But you send that program in, and they have to be able to prove through research that it is something that actually changes behavior. So
That's implemented into our schools now? in
Yes.
this district?
there's a lot that isn't evidence-based, but there's a lot that is evidence-based. And would you want to speak on that? Because I don't know a lot about.
But I just wanted to speak to your work. Laura has
Phil?
been great.
Excuse me,
Sorry.
can you need a mic? Sorry.
Sorry. I just want to speak to Laura's hard work that she's done. She's done a great job of coordinating a lot of work with our health teachers in both the middle school and the high school to work through curriculum to kind of get the messaging consistent throughout our district. And that has been a huge help as we move forward and try to get the messaging out to people. And so a lot of her work has been to check what they've been doing to based on the research that she has available. So it's been really helpful for us as a district to move forward.
Well, you'd be happy to know that as a district, you guys are already doing like so much of what you should be doing anyway. It's really just filling in a lot of other stuff. But this is one of the best districts I've ever witnessed. So pat on the back.
Phil,
You get a
Phil,
brownie for saying something nice.
Phil, we know who you are, but could you introduce yourself just so if there's.
Sorry, I'm
people
Phil
wa-
Rossetti, one of the assistant principals at the high school. So, and I'm a board member of the Be the Influence Coalition as well. So.
One last vote. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Don't want to get in trouble. Are we educating our educators?
More people.
Absolutely, and these were the health teachers, and that's really where you're going to hit most of that substance abuse curriculum. So we held a retreat, and I mean, they already know their stuff. These guys are really good, but it was just a question of how is the middle school doing things versus how is the high school doing things, and are we all on the same page? Because the kids were having a little bit of a transition issue coming from middle school to high school in terms of what they knew, remembered, and were they getting the right information. So.
I guess I heard the healthcare, but I guess I'm going broader brush with that.
I can
Yeah.
address that. Previously, I think it was 2 years ago, there was a training conducted before Laura came on, yes. So that training's been out there, probably due to at some point go through another refresher on that, for sure.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, I guess we are all set.
Okay, and I'll leave a couple of these behind. I did a presentation today, and all the kids took them. I meant to have one, but this is just kind of a reiteration of some of the facts that we said. If you want to just have it so that you can refer back to them. Oh, thank you.
Thank you guys for your work.
Great.
Oh,
Appreciate
thank
it very
you.
much.
We really appreciate all you do.
Thank you. Now, this is a continuing project, right, Laura?
Absolutely, yeah. It's a 10-year grant, but your first 5 years is basically, if you're meeting all criteria, then they continue it. So this will be our 3rd year going in. We're finishing our 2nd.
Okay, good. Then sometime in the future, we'll have you back again. And
Well, that
hopefully,
sounds good. I'll tap dance,
hopefully,
I'll sing.
hopefully we'll
Bring
have.
brownies.
Well, I'm going to leave
yeah.
the brownies because I don't
Good
need to be
brownies.
bringing that home. And I think once I leave the room, you're going to be less embarrassed and you're going to eat them.
Yeah, no, as a matter of fact, can you pass me those?
Yeah, hand them out there. Now, if he starts acting funky after a while,
He's beside me. I'll
I did.
elbow him. He was serious.
No shame, I'll deliver.
Not even joking.
Okay, great.
You
Thank
can do that, but if the fat guy does it, it's-
you. Want some more? Is that what it is?
Oh, geez.
Okay, so thank you to Laura for coming to give us that update. And we'll move on now. So next on our agenda is our auditor's report for 2016-17. And are you here alone tonight, Amy? Amy Chase from Runyon, Kirstein, and Roulette is here. Can you do it from up there?
Yeah.
Usually we have a table, but,
No, I can-
okay, great.
So good evening. It's that time of year where the RSU has completed another annual audit for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2017. I'd like to say thank you to Sandy, Dawn, and Stacy Webster, who is the district attorney, who is very helpful in the process and helps us, all of them help us complete a timely and efficient audit. Stacy, who's not here but plays a large role in the audit, she's involved in the interim process, which we begin in the middle to late part of May. She is involved in the day-to-day field work that we conduct in usually the last week of July when we do the field work for the audit. And then she is also very helpful in helping us gather any subsequent documents that we need to be able to finalize the audit and make sure that all the deadlines are met. So it should be of no surprise that the audit did go very, very well this year. In front of you, we prepared a short PowerPoint presentation. It looks like this and has a few graphs in it. It summarizes the financial statement audit results, and that is what I'm going to review with you this evening. It focuses primarily on the general fund, as the general fund is your largest fund. If you turn to page 2 of the presentation, it goes over it's a summary of the audit results. The financial statements received an unmodified opinion. That is a clean opinion, and that is very good to get. That just means that your financial statements as of June 30, 2017 are fairly stated in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. We then prepared 2 compliance audits, one of those being government auditing standards, which is the testing of the internal controls over the financial reporting processes of the RSU. We had no material weaknesses, but we did have one significant deficiency, which is segregation of duties, which is a comment that is repeated year after year. It probably will not go away unless you would hire additional staff for the finance office. And that's not to say that the staff that's currently there is not doing their job. This is a common comment that we give out or issue for districts of your size. If you were in a much larger district, this comment would probably not be present. But it's not a bad thing. It's just something that we have to bring to your attention due to the size of the finance office. Our second compliance audit is a report required by the Uniform Guidance, or what was formerly known as the Single Audit A133 audit. That is the grant specific, and it's testing your grants. And that is because the district spends over $750,000 in federal grant monies, and they are required to undergo a grant audit. For 2017, we tested the Special Education Cluster, otherwise known as Local Entitlement, and the Title I grant. We are happy to report that there were no findings in either of these programs that we were tested. We did, I'm not sure if you remember or not, but in 2016, we did have a finding for local entitlement. As a result, we were required to retest that program or that grant again this year, which is why we did so. The comment or the finding that we had that related to excess cash on hand was not repeated. So I'm happy to report that neither of these grant programs had findings. I will, in another report, after we are done with the PowerPoint, I will go over some other comments that we came up that we want to bring management to bring to management's attention. I'll go over that in another report. The next page goes over your fund balance of the general fund. If you compare the last 4 years, there hasn't been, or at least from last year, the fund balance has remained relatively consistent with that of last year. We did assign, or management did assign, $5.3 million. 4.5 is roughly due to capital projects, and the other $750 was used to balance the budget, this year's budget. If you want additional information on what makes up or where the fund balance that was allocated to the various capital projects, because there is a large number of them, you can turn to page 33 of the actual bound financial statements for a listing of what makes up the various allocations. The next page goes over the general fund revenues, comparing your budget to actual. Your intergovernmental revenues exceeded its budget. The RSU received approximately $54,000 more in state agency client revenues and $20,000 more in main care revenues than what had been budgeted. And that's a hard number. Those are two hard numbers to be able to budget, and most districts go on the conservative side because they just don't know what they're going to receive. Your other revenues came in about $180,000 over budget, and that is due to unbudgeted insurance proceeds of approximately $37,000, as well as greater than expected investment earnings and additional transportation fees from field trips than what had been budgeted for. Expenditures on the next page. Every cost center was under budget with the exception of transportation, and transportation went over budget by approximately $48,000, and that was due to an increase in bus driver costs for special education students. Your savings from the other cost centers are a result of the realignment of K through 2 teachers, teacher retirements, and reduced fuel costs. When teachers retire and new teachers come in, they come in at a lower salary than the outgoing teachers, which results in savings. The next graph is a revenue distribution allocation between your state and local assessments. As you can see, your local assessments result in the 63% range, and your intergovernmental revenues account for about 36 to 37% of your total revenues. Intergovernmental is your state subsidies, your Medicaid, your state agency clients' revenue. The next two graphs, pages 7 and 8, are two pie charts that show the percentage of your expenditures as compared to your total expenditures, and it breaks it out by the different cost centers. As you can see, regular instruction and special education instruction are your two largest expenditure cost centers. And when you compare it to last year, they're very spot on. There's nothing here that fluctuates dramatically. And then the last page just goes over the fund balances of your other funds. The first few pages, like I said earlier, were all on the general fund. This just goes to show the fund balances of the different funds. School lunch always goes to zero, or Stacy tries to get that fund balance to zero. Most of the time, the general fund has to do a transfer to bring the school nutrition fund out of its deficit. In 2017, is about a $55,000 transfer that was done from the general fund into the school nutrition fund to bring its deficit to zero. All the other funds have healthy fund balances. Any questions over the graphs? The next report that I want to go over, or before I move on, your financial statements are the thick bound copy. In the front, there's a management's discussion and analysis. That is prepared by Dawn and Stacy. That is a useful tool and a great tool to read through and understand what the financial statements are about and where revenues may have exceeded budget. Same with expenditures. It briefly summarizes your capital assets, the long-term debt. That's a useful tool to read in understanding the financial statements. And the last report that I want to go over is, I believe, is another bound copy. It's called Reports Required by Government Auditing Standards and the Uniform Guidance. I'd like you to turn to page 9, as that's where I'm going to focus the last of the presentation. So page 9 discusses in detail, which again is a repeated comment from last year, your significant deficiency over segregation of duties. Like I've mentioned earlier, given the size of the finance office, without hiring additional people, this comment cannot be removed. However, we recommend that you continue to review monthly financial reports that are given to you by the finance office. And if you have any questions or are uncertain of something on those reports that you're not comfortable with or do not understand, feel free to ask Stacy or Dawn. I'm sure they'd be more than willing to answer any of those questions. And that is something that might eliminate something unusual that you may find in the accounting, or that might not look right to you. And again, the only way to eliminate this comment would be to get a bigger finance staff where everybody could do a little bit of something. It's common. My next comment that I want to go, or my next two comments that I want to go over, are comments that we have found throughout, and we want to bring to management's attention, that we found throughout our audit procedures. Again, like last year, we commented on the school activity funds. The comment is here again in a little bit different fashion, but we, as part of our audit, we look at the internal controls and test the internal controls of all the activity funds at the various schools. We also test internal controls at the central office, but the central office internal control procedures are different than the internal control procedures for the various schools for their activity funds. And one of the things that keeps coming up in our testing is the timeliness of deposits. And while we were testing some of the schools, Wyndham Primary, Jordan Small, and Raymond Elementary, we noticed that when we look at deposits, the money has come in for some time and deposits are not made timely. The policy states that deposits are to be made in a timely manner, and if they are in excess of $100, have to be made daily. Timely can be gray, but in our eyes, it's usually a week. But we were noting deposits being made more than 2 weeks later. That just means, and a lot of it, I think, has to do with fundraising events that are being conducted and the teachers are collecting money. They tend to want to hold that money until, so they can track it properly until the fundraising is done or the money needs to be submitted. With that being said, it might take 3 or 4 weeks. That's not really a good procedure to take because that money is sitting somewhere. It could be in the desk drawer, it could be cash, it could be checks. There's risk, and I'm not saying we did not find any fraud or anything like that, but the risk is there that the money could get stolen and there would be no way of tracking that. I know that I've spoken with Stacy. She has been able to get, I think, another check, like electronic check deposit machine that's going into one of the schools. I think it might be the primary school because they tend to have a lot of deposits, and hopefully that will help in eliminating this issue. But it continues to be a problem in our audit, not necessarily finding fraud, but the deposits are not being made timely. And we just want to bring that to your attention.
I have a question.
Sure.
How can you tell that it's 2 weeks from the dates the checks are received?
Because they are required, they make backup copies or photocopies of the checks that are collected, and so we can see on all the checks the date the check is written, and then we tie to the receipt that is printed from the ADS software or the student activity tracker, and then we see the deposit slip, and we then tie to the bank statement. So all the dates are there for us, and when we see a check, might be dated October 1st, and the deposit is made maybe October 15th, October 20th, there's a lapse there. We go with the date of the check. Granted, it could have been dropped off October 7th, but we go by that date because that's the evidence that we have at that point to support the deposits.
Thanks.
My last comment that we wrote is has to do with local entitlement and the grant management. While we were testing local entitlement this year, we did not have a finding, and this did not result in a finding, but we had difficulties reconciling the grant expenditures to the general ledger system and to the year-end reports that have to be submitted to the Maine Department of Education. And I talked with Stacy, and she has since put a process in place and is working closely with Lisa to be able to reconcile on a monthly or quarterly basis, however often she is doing her drawdown reports, to ensure that what is being reported out of ADS is what she is going to be drawing down. And what we want to make sure is that there's a good reconciliation process in place so that we don't come up with last year's comment of potentially having excess cash on hand or leaving money out there on the grant that may not have been drawn down that the district is entitled to. So I just wanted to bring that to management's attention, but I do know that after we left the audit, there was conversations and meetings, and I do know that this is being addressed. And that is all I have, unless there are any other questions.
Anybody have anything? All set?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome. No problem.
Thank you for the report.
Thank you.
All right, next on our, sound like a door knocking. Next we have an appointment. If we could have a motion, please, on, is this a new or a replacement?
It's a replacement.
Replacement, okay.
I move to approve the following appointment for the 2017-2018 school year. Caitlin Plain, speech language pathologist in the primary school, master's salary of $53,160, prorated to $39,279.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any comments from the public? Anything from the board? Okay, all those in favor? It is unanimous. Okay, before I go on, could I ask you who you are? We usually don't get public out there.
I actually have children in the school. Jenny was the teacher of one of them, but I'm a student at Central Maine Community College, and for our class, we
Wait,
had to
you-
go and observe.
You want to come
a
up?
board
Come up to
meeting.
the, or he can handle it. Can you come up? Oh, come on. Right there she can do it from.
My name is Jenny Thompson, and I actually have children in the district. Jenny taught one of them 2 years. I am currently a student at Central Maine Community College, and for our class, we had to go and observe a board meeting and take notes.
Cool. Thank you for
So
coming.
I chose this school. We could go to any school we wanted, but I wanted to know what was going on in my own town.
Atta girl. Thank you for coming. Okay, next on our agenda, we had talked before about, it was agreed upon that we were going to put a committee together to redo the superintendent's evaluation form itself. So, this is the legal piece of it. We've already figured who is going to be on that group, which we can come up with after. If I could have a motion, please.
I move to appoint a special standing committee of the school board consisting of 3 board members, and the charge of this committee will be to review the current superintendent's evaluation system and craft a new superintendent's evaluation form to be brought before the board for review. The charge for this committee will remain open until a new system has been discussed and approved by the board as a whole.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any comments, questions? By the way, we have people who volunteered for this. Pete Hensler, who else is on that group with you? Anna Keeney. And Eric Holby. Those will be our 3 board members on this group. And I think we got the motion right, didn't we, Kate? Per policy? Okay, atta girl. Okay, all those in favor? It is unanimous. We now have Superintendent's Evaluation Board. All right, is there anything else? Nothing?
Move to adjourn the regular meeting.
You can if you want.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you very much.
You picked the short one.